It is that time of year. It is time to unveil Matt Williamson's first edition of his fantasy rankings for 2023. And of course, we are starting with the quarterbacks. Where are the teals? Where are the tiers? And when should you draft your quarterback for the 2023 season? Coming up right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter, on Threads. Of course, you can find us everywhere you find your podcasts, including YouTube. And come on over and drop a comment there. Make sure you're subscribed up, hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode arrives. And so you know when we go live for our mailbag. And you can drop a question there on YouTube as well. And Matt, we are talking quarterback tiers on today's episode of Peacock and Williamson, or quarterback rankings, excuse me. But fantasy is one of the topics that I really want to get to as it pertains to your quarterback fantasy rankings. And before we get into your rankings, since this is the first one, I'm going to give you the floor a little bit today. Any overlying subject matters that you want to talk about here as it pertains to quarterbacks before we start looking at exactly how you rank these guys?
So, to be honest, basically, fantasy season kicks in for me during the dead period or so. I mean, dynasties all year round, but I start thinking about redraft stuff. And frankly, it's such a great tool for what we do, even for this podcast. And a lot of the stats and analysis that I get and consider comes from fantasy podcasts and sites out there, and it's tremendous. But fantasy players, first of all, are just so much smarter now than they ever were. You know, I mean, it wasn't long ago my buddies would show up with a magazine they bought a month ago to the draft and use that as their rankings, you know. So I think I made a living for so long, and I'm sure so many of our listeners, as a late round quarterback guy. You know, my home league with my high school buds, 12-team league, I would say 8 out of 10 years, I was the 12th owner to take a quarterback. And then I'd take one shortly after. But I was not paying up for any of them. Times have changed, and I have to really take a step back on that philosophy and say, man, I might want to pay up for some of these guys. I mean, anyone that had Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts did really well in their fantasy league last year, and they're going high.
I got to admit, Matt, in a lot of my fantasy leagues, especially last year, but in recent history, and I've been a running backs don't matter guy. I've done a lot of zero running back stuff, but when I have a high pick, I'll draft a running back in that spot when I need to. But it's always been late round quarterback.
Yeah,
you get the guy that comes in, he's like, I want the best quarterback in the league. I draft him in the second round. You know, like, oh, there's that guy. You know, he drafts the first kicker, drafts the first defense, drafts the first quarterback every year. It's always been late round QB for me. Is that going away? And is it completely gone for you? Like, how early is too early for a quarterback these days?
So this will correlate with the names. There is a consensus tier. I don't want to speak for everybody, but in some order, Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen are the tier 1 quarterbacks. But they're going like first, second round turn, all through the second round. Maybe you could get one of them at the top of the third if your league's still pretty old school. So, I mean, you're giving up a premium running back, Kelsey, receiver, to take a stud quarterback. But it's really hard to envision them busting, and the teams that had them last year are in. I can't quite get there. Like, if that's the first tier, and it is for me, I rank them Allen, Hurts, Mahomes. I'm not paying that price, but I am very open to 4 through 8 or so on my list.
Okay, I have a follow-up question on that, but we'll wait till we get to the tiers because that's super important to me when we talk about these quarterbacks. And you think that is the number 1 tier for you? It's 3 quarterbacks deep, and it is in that order. Josh Allen, number 1, Jalen Hurts, number 2, and Patrick Mahomes, number 3?
Yes and no. I kind of lied there. The consensus is they're the top tier, and that's my order of those top tier guys.
Okay.
I think Lamar's right there. So he is in my top tier, but not everyone else's.
So to reiterate, quarterback 1 for Matt Williamson in 2023 is Buffalo Bills passer Josh Allen. Number 2, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles, Pat Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs, number 3, and Lamar Jackson, number 4. And that is your tier break. So to me, after what we've learned so far to begin this show, Matt, I'm guessing Team Williamsons are going to have a lot of Lamar Jackson that you draft after the 3rd round on your fantasy teams.
Yes. I think he's my most owned quarterback in the best ball stuff I've been doing, underdog. And because most people think there's a little bit of a gap after whoever your 3rd guy is, and I've been pouncing on him there, which is really against my nature, just like you said. I am a wait guy. But, boy, I think they're going to throw more. He's healthy. I think he's got a great supporting cast. So if I can get a tier 1 guy at a tier 2 price, I've been buying that guy.
It's so hard for me to wrap my brain around drafting a quarterback before round 4, like in the top 3 rounds, to not have a running back and a couple of receivers, or 2 running backs and a stud pass catcher before you even start thinking about quarterback. And then if the top guys are already gone, I'm definitely not drafting a quarterback, around 4, 5, and 6 if I'm missing out on that tier 2, because even if I was, it would be like, okay, if Josh Allen's there in the 4th round, I get it. But if he's already gone, then what am I doing drafting a quarterback there? So it's interesting for you personally, where you have them ranked versus consensus. It puts you in a nice spot to draft a guy that you feel good about in Lamar Jackson in that place. But for a lot of people, they're going to have to go earlier if they want one of the top guys. And if they think Lamar Jackson is a mid-tier quarterback, then what do you do then? Do you wait? Or once you say, okay, first few rounds are gone, I'm diving into the quarterback market and I'll get the best one?
Yeah, I'm still sorting my feelings out, because I think you and I are very much in tune on this. It is ingrained on me not to take one early. Don't do it. But I think it helps if you look at it in this light. This is a week-to-week game, fantasy football. And think of that hopeless feeling when Team Williamson is winning by 20 points going into Monday night, and Team Peacock has Josh Allen, and that's it. It's like, I'm dead. I'm dead. I could be winning by 30, and I'm nervous to no end. You know what I mean? Like, you hate to play the guy that has the tier 1 quarterback. It's awful.
So if you don't get a tier 1 quarterback, we're going to talk about the rest of the tiers, where to strike on these guys, some of Matt Williamson's favorites, and how he has these ranked. And he's got them ranked right now from 1 all the way down to 22. We know the top 4. Number 5, it might surprise you. It might not. And what about the next generation of young stud passers in the NFL? Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Take your first swing right now at FanDuel and bet Major League Baseball and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 on that first bet and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from money lines, over-unders, who's going to hit the first home run, tons of great bets, tons of great props, build your own parlay, daily specials at FanDuel, all on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. I love navigating the app and the website. And plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. And maybe Major League Baseball isn't your thing. Well, how about NFL football? There's tons of ways to bet NFL football. We're talking quarterbacks today. How about this? 4,000 plus regular season passing yards. All these quarterbacks have to do is throw for 4,000 yards. You're not getting a big payoff if it's Mahomes or Herbert or Joe Burrow that does it, or Josh Allen. But about Trevor Lawrence, you can get even money or a little better. Trevor Lawrence, 4,000 passing yards. Kind of like that one. Dak, Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers in New York. So there's tons of ways to bet on a number of NFL things. And of course, Major League Baseball all summer long, every single day. No better place to do it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Number 1, Josh Allen. Number 2, Jalen Hurts. Number 3, Pat Mahomes. Number 4, Lamar Jackson. That's the end of tier 1 for Matt Williamson. How big is tier 2, and where does tier 2 begin?
It's a 3 quarterback tier that are one of them is unlike the other in the real world, but Justin Fields just runs like few others. And I really believe the running quarterbacks just have very high floors in fantasy. I mean, if he's going to get you 50 to 100 rushing yards per game, I'm not even talking about the rushing touchdowns that are inevitable. He doesn't have to throw for that many yards or touchdowns to be the quarterback 5 when it's all said and done. So my tier 2, and I'm interested in shopping in this neighborhood too, is Fields, Herbert, Burrow. I don't feel super strong about the order. I hate having Burrow last there.
Yeah, it does feel weird
really
having
good.
Joe Burrow down there, but clearly the running ability in fantasy sports is super valuable, and especially if your league gives you 4 points for a passing touchdown, you get 6 points for a rushing touchdown.
True.
All the rushing yards, and then you get some passing touchdowns thrown in on top of it. And if there's any gain in ability, which we both project that there's going to be for Justin Fields, he can be a league winner for you. And I think you can get Justin Fields even later than 5 in a lot of leagues. So I think if you're going to have a lot of Lamar, I think I'm going to end up with a lot of Justin Fields. And I'm a little bit too bullish on these Chicago Bears right now, but that's where I'm at. And so I'm just gonna stick there. Are these guys good for you in that same area just after Lamar though in the draft? So you hit round 4, round 5, you taking these quarterbacks?
Yeah, I'm starting. That was harder for me is to pull that trigger and to feel comfort with that, but I'm starting to be very comfortable with it. Like Herbert's supporting cast is incredibly good, and he dealt with injuries last year. I just saw this as well, that the new coordinator Moore, it just runs plays at a much faster rate than the Chargers used to. So he probably is going to snap the ball at a higher rate than he did before. Tremendous player. Burrow just doesn't run quite enough for me. That's why he's 7.
Yeah, with Herbert, it's really interesting because of his physical ability, and he runs a little bit as well, right? And get you a couple of those touchdowns. And but man, if his staple receivers can stay a little bit healthier, they added more to it. New offensive coordinator, more plays, more yards potentially and touchdowns there. Obviously, that's a combination for a lot of fantasy points. So Justin Fields 5, Justin Herbert 6, Joe Burrow 7, which brings us to your third tier of quarterbacks that begins with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the tiers are at here, but this starts to be high variance land. You know, like, boy, it's a pretty easy picture to write where Deshaun Watson is quarterback 3 this year in fantasy. I mean, I think that's where he ended his Texan career. And it's very clear that the Browns are catering to Watson. You know, they're getting him receivers. He's got a good tight end. He's got a really good line. And we know even if he's not a great football player, if he runs a lot, he's going to do well. So this one, if I'm drafting Deshaun Watson at this cost, I'm also going to grab Kirk Cousins a couple rounds later, or Aaron Rodgers, or someone safe. You know what I mean?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. This is now the late round QB, right? Is this tier, and you're getting one of the last few starters of your fantasy league, depending on how deep your league is. If it's a 12-team league, you're getting the bottom quarter of your starters here, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You are doubling up then on another quarterback. You go one high variance, maybe one safe guy. It is difficult to go that route, and it's the route I've gone a lot lately, and then you don't know which quarterback to start. Then you start the wrong one in a week that you think one guy looks really great, and so I could see why people do want to go a little bit earlier with their fantasy quarterbacks, just to have something that feels good, knowing you plug in a guy and you don't take him out unless it's his bye week.
That is a great feeling.
Yeah.
It's just expensive now, though.
And again, Matt Williamson, co-host of Locked On Dynasty Football. We're talking about fantasy and not quite dynasty here. A little bit later, I do want to talk a little bit more dynasty and how you project some of these young quarterbacks going forward. But part of that conversation is a couple of really young quarterbacks that show up for you next on your list at number 9 and 10. Trevor Lawrence, I don't think should surprise anybody with his ability, projecting his, after his year 2 breakout, projecting him to be even better in year 3 with a better, second year in the scheme, more talent around him. But how about rookie Indianapolis Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson showing up, Matt, in your top 10 at number 10?
Real quick on Watson, that you might take him at quarterback 8, and 5 weeks in, you've started him every week to your point, and you're 1-4 going, I'm stuck with this guy and he's never going to get out of it. I should have started Cousins every one. You're like,
Yeah.
that's the fear. Like, I don't think that's the fear with Lawrence, but I thought Watson's ceiling is higher than Lawrence. We've seen him be a elite fantasy quarterback. So that's my toughest thing right now, Watson versus Lawrence. And then we can get to Richardson for sure. Do you have a preference there, Lawrence versus Watson?
I tend to go with the younger projection breakout style of player, but there's a lot of that baked in with Watson too. So to me, I'd probably wait until they feel like there's a smoking bargain in that league. And I think in a lot of leagues, we'll see Lawrence go before Watson, but that's just a feel I get. But yeah, I would feel good about either one of them on my team. I'd probably lean Lawrence though. And he does, they both have some athleticism and can add that part of it. But you're hoping for bigger passing numbers than last year for both of those guys.
And speaking of athleticism, that's all the Richardson bet is. I mean, I'm operating in the assumption in the middle of July that he will be the opening day starter. If that's in doubt or if he's going to do just small packages, obviously he's not the quarterback 10. But he might be the best. I mean, Fields didn't complete many passes last year. Hurts 2 years ago was not an accomplished passing fantasy asset, but they're top 10 quarterbacks all day long. I mean, Daniel Jones hardly threw any touchdowns last year, and you could start him fine in fantasy. And Richardson's 1,000 times better runner than Jones.
And you have Shane Steichen, who worked
with
that one of the quarterbacks you just talked about. So that's what you're hoping with Anthony Richardson as a rookie. And look, it's a gamble betting on any rookie, but that floor of the rushing ability, knowing there's an offensive coordinator who's gone down that path before with a quarterback with such tools, and has even more tools now to work with Anthony Richardson. So as long as he's not a disaster that keeps him off the field, you should get that base level of fantasy production. And you're hoping that Anthony Richardson in year one is similar to what we saw last year from Justin Fields or the year before from Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. And frankly, I thought Fields was a better passer than Richardson coming out of school, but I think Richardson is a little bit underrated as a passer. And in the world of fantasy, the difference between completing 53 and 58% of your passes doesn't add up to as many fantasy points as you'd think, especially if you make big plays.
Let's finish up the QB1 territory, the top 12 for, a baseline 12-team league here. Number 11 is Dak Prescott, and number 12 is Tua Tagovailoa. So how hard was it to rank these guys in this area of your quarterback rankings, Matt?
Tua is my hardest guy to rank. I mean, Tua to me is just how injury adverse are you, and frankly, I'm very cocky in fantasy and I'm not super injury adverse because I'm so smart. I'll find someone on the waiver wire or I'll make a trade. If he gets hurt, I can handle it because I'm the best owner ever. I mean, that's the approach I take to fantasy, and against the clowns I play with from high school, I'm not always wrong. But anyway, Tua to me is really hard to
shout out to them if they're listening.
AJ and Sab, all you buddies. Yeah, exactly. He's remarkably productive without running all that much. I mean, it's all the system and Hill and Tua's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but you were really happy with him as your fantasy quarterback when healthy last year. We can talk about Dak in a minute, but I mean, Tua is hard to rank. I mean, is he better than Kirk Cousins and Geno Smith and Aaron Rodgers? And on his best day, his healthy days, he is.
Part of the reason that late round quarterbacks were a thing in fantasy is because of this tier and how big this tier is, where you could say, man, I could draw a picture and likely at the end of the year, and you look at the stats from last year, the fantasy value from 9 to 20 is probably not even all that much. So why would I can go wait a while and get Kirk Cousins, who we haven't even heard from.
Right.
Why would I spend 5-round, 6-round earlier pick on one of the mid-tier guys when I can get pretty close? And there's a ton of these quarterbacks that you can really make a good argument for. Next on the list is the one you mentioned that as long as Brian Daboll continues to allow him to run as much as he did last year, Daniel Jones has a lot of value.
Without question. And much better pass catchers. And it's second year in the system. And I don't care how much money they gave him. You and I wouldn't have given him that money. I don't care if he's not the 13th best quarterback on the planet. But if he runs for 500 or 600 yards, and that's a designed aspect of their offense, and why wouldn't it be at this stage? that has immense value. There's two guys, Daniel Jones and Kenny Pickett, that this threw so few passing touchdowns. Like, they're not going to throw 12 and 16 touchdowns again. I mean, it's going to go up to 20 at least. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need a ton from you more, but it's going to go up. He's throwing to Waller now. I mean, his receivers were really, really bad. Last note, too, Dak, I kind of skipped over because I'm such a believer in him as a player. But he runs less and less and less anymore since his big injury, which is a bit of a misnomer.
He's going to need the passing touchdowns to go up and the interceptions to go down if his rushing production is going to continue to go down.
Exactly. And McCarthy plays slow. You know, like they're not going to run as many snaps as he did with Moore.
All right, more sleeper candidates, QB2s for your fantasy football rosters next. Thank you once again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube, notification bell, hit the thumbs up, and you can find us everywhere you find your favorite podcasts. We are on to a really interesting and a favorite of mine this year in fantasy, and that's Kirk Cousins, because he is so reliable. If you're looking for the perfect quarterback too, it's Kirk Cousins. You know exactly what you're going to get from Kirk Cousins, especially if you have sort of a volatile QB1 on your fantasy roster. You kind of go back to back. You know, you go Anthony Richardson. It's like, oh, okay, let's go Kirk Cousins too, right? A couple rounds later or a round later or back to back at the turn or something like that, just to make sure we have a base level of production and we could even see the best level of production from Kirk Cousins this year. The defense is worse. I think they're going to throw it more. No Dalvin Cook. They might run it less. So this offense is going to this offense is going to revolve around Kirk Cousins, and he is the best receiving weapon in the league at his disposal.
I don't have much more to add to it, except you 100% nailed it. I love their offense. I love their passing game. I think he's maybe coming off his best season as a pro. No one ever gives him that credit. I hate their defense. I don't think they're going to be able to grind games out. It's his second year. It's funny, the show you mentioned, quarterback. I mean, early in the season, he's like, I'm still thinking. I'm not, I'm not as comfortable in this offense yet. Well, this year will be much different. But, if you took our old strategy and you're the last team in your league to take a quarterback and it's Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins back to back, and I do that and I got to play Team Peacock that has Justin Fields, I'm scared.
Well, Team Peacock might draft Fields and Kirk Cousins. That might be my strategy. To get the high volatile and the safe guy is my backup.
Yeah. Every year when the season's over, quarterback 12 in fantasy this year was Kirk Cousins. Yep. Every year. It's like 11 or 13 or 12. Every year.
Get some QB1 production for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's good.
What about Geno Smith? How confident are you at number 15, Geno Smith, that you will get QB1 production there?
He was better than this last year. His weapons are better. All indications are they're going to play more 3 receiver sets and maybe throw the football more. They gave him money. He was an elite deep passer. So, I mean, big plays are there to Metcalf, Lockett, whomever. I don't want to take anything away from the guy, but I can't jump in with both feet, though, because he's been in the league as long as RG3, and he's had one good year.
And it was kind of it was like a great half a year.
It was 2/3 of a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. The end wasn't so great.
I'm skeptical. I don't think I'll have to on any of my fantasy teams because, what's funny is I know the Seattle Seahawks drafted a first-round wide receiver, but what did they do right after that? They came back and drafted another running back, too.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
This is where all the folks out there that have number 12 jerseys are going to look at you, and maybe some number 8 jerseys now in New York, look at you a little sideways, having Aaron Rodgers behind the Geno Smiths and Daniel Jones of the world.
I could be convinced that Rodgers could move up a spot, maybe 2. I don't know that he's going to run for 100 yards this year, though. And at his age, is he going to be doing goal line sneaks? I mean, he has to throw 40 touchdowns to be a top 12 quarterback almost. And he might.
Can I paint the picture, Matt, that Aaron Rodgers comes out and does the Peyton Manning in Denver, like 50 touchdown crazy season out of nowhere?
Yes, that's a picture I would buy. And I think is not a fallacy. It absolutely could happen. And frankly, I'm sitting here looking at my rankings. Is he really any different than a healthy Tua? Because Tua doesn't run either. All their production comes through the air. but it has to be elite to keep up with even Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, you know?
If Richardson's on the field and is the guy we think he's going to be. And obviously fantasy-wise, different than winning football games as a quarterback. But
Right.
I'm looking at this tier, and if I'm drafting a QB2, I'm eyeballing Kirk Cousins. I'm eyeballing Aaron Rodgers all day long because I can see where it could go. And even with Rodgers, I just look out. It isn't a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's very talented, has a ton of weapons at his disposal. Familiar play caller for him over there in New York now. It could go amazingly well, and it could also be a disaster. Who knows? But
I just put him over Geno. Moved up one spot.
I got you. Okay. Now, number 15, Aaron Rodgers. Number 16, Geno Smith. To finish up the rest of your rankings here, and I don't know if you have a favorite sleeper. Clearly, I just kind of painted the picture of Aaron Rodgers as that sleeper for your fantasy league. But 17 is Russell Wilson, 18, Jared Goff. You got Kenny Pickett at 19, Jordan Love 20, Matthew Stafford 21, and your rankings go down to number 22, which is Derek Carr. And again, Geno Smith to Derek Carr, it's hard to really differentiate what those could look like, and you could argue that one is going to have a good season and one is not potentially. But there's some interesting names in here. Do you have a favorite sleeper from the bottom of your rankings from around 15 to 22?
Sort of. I'm avoiding the other rookies at the moment. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. Brock Purdy intentionally is not listed, but he would probably be right there with Pickett, and Purdy is going to be a conversation we have a lot this year, of course.
Yeah, clearly Brock Purdy healthy goes above Kenny Pickett. But.
It's so not a sexy pick, but if Matthew Stafford looks healthy, the second half of games, he might throw for 200 yards a game. No matter who, you know what I mean?
Similar to what I talked about with Kirk Cousins. And you have a good quarterback who's had some big-time fantasy production before. Great receiving weapon in Cooper Kupp that can get open. Your defense is not projected to be great. You should be throwing the ball a lot. If you're healthy, they're going to be leaning on you, and that could return you some huge fantasy production.
Yeah. A sneaky one I didn't rank, because I don't even know if he's a starter 100%, is Sam Howell. I love his receivers, and I'm looking it up right now, but his his last year at North Carolina, he ran a lot, and I want to say it was like 800 yards or so. I haven't yet found it. I'm sneaking around here while I'm trying to talk, but he's a good runner that could probably stand to do a little less of it than he did his last year, but here it is. 828 rushing yards his last year at North Carolina. 828 and 11 touchdowns. Like, he's not Anthony Richardson, but he runs a lot.
That's a very interesting one. Maybe that is the best super sleeper. Do you put him at 23 on your list after Derek Carr?
I just did. I just punched in 2-3 on my little spreadsheet. Yep.
There we go. Sam Howell. Williamson super sleeper for 2023. That's a good one. Year 2, had a year in the system. He's got a new offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, but we'll see what that ends up looking like for Sam Howell. But that's an interesting one. He's got arm strength. He's got receivers. He's got some running ability to give you a little bit of a floor there that some young quarterbacks might not have. And I'm with you. I'd probably draft Sam Howell over Bryce Young, over CJ Stroud, as highly as those guys were drafted, just for that reason. Year 2, rookie quarterbacks usually are pretty scary. Anthony Richardson, I understand with the athleticism and the running ability there. Maybe too high for me at number 10 for Anthony Richardson. Yeah, of some of the younger quarterbacks, I'd be all over Purdy, Howell in that quarterback 2 area if you're just trying to figure out who to have as your backup quarterback to start the year that could go big.
And after a little more info, I'll probably put Purdy at 16, 17, closer to Geno Smith.
The injury stuff's huge there because you're not going to draft a quarterback who's going to miss 4 weeks or something like that. But if he's cleared and he's starting week 1 before your fantasy draft, that definitely changes things.
And the Howell thing just kind of dawned on me now because I was sitting there looking like, who of these not ranked guys could put up good fantasy numbers? You don't even have to be good. Just don't get benched in week 3.
Right. Yeah. Don't get benched week 3. It'll be so bad that I'm dropping you from my fantasy roster.
Right. And that could happen to him. That's not going to happen to Derek Carr and, Jared
Which doesn't matter if you draft him in the very last pick anyway.
Yeah. Right.
That is Matt Williamson's quarterback rankings, early rankings here, looking at the 2023 fantasy season. If you don't like those rankings, find Matt at Williamson NFL. If you do like the rankings, you can find me at BD Peacock. Of course, you can find us on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts, and get those questions in for tomorrow's mailbag episode right here, Peacock and Williamson.